And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, Interim Director at WEIU Radio. My co-host is Mr. Daniel Jones.
Happy Monday, everyone. I'm awake and I'm here.
That's good. And our guest there from the Booth Public Library, the Booth Library here at Eastern Illinois campus, the Dean, Mr. Zach Newell.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
And of course, Beth Heldebrandt, who's always here from the library.
Thanks for having us back.
Oh, thanks for coming in. I don't know where we're going to start. You have so many things going on right now, but I thought we would start a little bit with the Student Innovation Center and all that stuff, because it seems like that's something that really would be a part of a lot of the students would be interested in it. And just tell us what it is and go from there.
Okay, Center for Student Innovation is now open at Booth Library, so it's on the lower level. If you're familiar with the library and you walk through the main hallway, you cross a bridge. And if you look down from that bridge down to the first floor, you'll see what used to be the periodicals desk. It is now open. We have two things going on in that space. One is technology checkout. So students can now check out things like laptops, Wi-Fi hotspots if you have trouble getting internet where you live, webcams, microphones, those sorts of things. And we also, in another portion of that space, have some permanent equipment like 3D printers, a podcasting studio, green screen, and videography equipment, and those sorts of things that can be used in the space.
And they're available for every student and professor on campus?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And maybe we should backtrack by saying that thanks to the Charleston Area Charitable Foundation, in the end of October, we finished a remodel of the space. So new carpet, new paint, new baseboards, new LED lighting, dimmable switches, really beautiful area.
They're good people. They're the one who paid for the WEIU radio transmitter, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. So we appreciate them very much.
We're thrilled to have their help. Yeah.
There you go. There's also in there something about a satellite location for Thomas Hall. Is that associated with that, or how's that work?
Right. Both of these projects were through the GEAR funding, the Governor's Emergency Education Fund.
Education
Relief Fund, GEAR. So the allocation that we got through the university helped us buy all the technology for the Booth CSI space. Separately, we applied for a grant, which we received also from GEAR, to open a satellite location in Thomas Hall. So that is just opened really as of like a couple days ago.
Oh, really? Cool.
But it's similar to the CSI, but smaller. So there is technology available there for checkout, also in the lower level of Thomas Hall. And there will be some of that equipment for an instructional studio there as well.
Where did the idea come from to do technology checkout and get all this new equipment?
Booth stayed open, as you know, during the pandemic in the spring, and when classes were going entirely online, we realized that a lot of students, a lot is relative, but for those students who are coming into the library, were scrambling to find some of the technology, laptops and other software that they needed to stay connected with their online classes. And I guess we realized that there was an opportunity for us to purchase or try to get some technology to help serve students. We would say that it's to bridge the technology equity gap, for those who, maybe they have a laptop and it's broken. How do you just come up with, $1,000 plus just to replace the laptop, or get connected off campus if you're living off campus and you need to access the internet? Because we should say, as part of this program, this state money, we also have Wi-Fi hotspots, 50 of them for checkout. So.
Okay. I noticed in the last year and a half, we have been, won't say inundated, but had a lot of students who are interested in podcasting with the radio station or using one of our online services here. How has the initial response been for the podcasts?
We started out creating a Booth Library podcast first. That equipment is just now getting open for other people to use. I know there's been a couple groups who've already come in to get a little tour of that area. So if you go to the CSI website, you can make an appointment to come in to view that equipment. So library.eiu.edu/CSI.
So if they get to record a podcast, does it go in the Booth Library, or do they keep it on like their own thumb drive?
No, they can keep it on their own thumb drive and upload it, whether it's for a class project or if they're with a RSO or something. No, they just have to have some way to record it and then upload it to wherever they want to save it. They're just using our equipment to create it.
I got you.
Are there any Booth Library specific podcasts or any in the works?
We did several in the fall semester. We haven't launched one yet for the spring, but they've got some ideas that they're working on. I think the last one we did in the fall semester, or second to last, was with EIU alum Craig Titley, who graduated
From Mattoon High School,
From
1985.
Mattoon, yeah, and graduated from EIU. He was supposed to be our special guest at our Comic-Con last spring, which got canceled
Yep.
because of the pandemic, but he was still kind enough to do a podcast with us, which you can view all of those podcasts on the YouTube channel for Booth Library.
It coincided with the publication of his recent book, right?
Right, and
So-
he had just recently
Yeah.
released a book. He was producer and writer for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so he's part of the Marvel Universe in that respect. So anyway, he had a lot of nice things to say about his time at EIU, and, you know, he had gotten, a scholarship, maybe a full-ride scholarship to go to the U of I, but he went there for a tour and said, I don't know, and he came to EIU for a tour and said, this is where I'm going.
That's
so
cool. Yeah, he's a good dude. On the podcast, I mean, how many people can be on a podcast? How many microphones and like that? So if people are interested.
we have 4. Because
pretty
of socially distanced,
Yeah.
it's weird right now. We have 2 people for the Booth Library, and they just kind of spread out in this room that we have set aside. So you have to keep those safety measures in mind. But
That's what we're
under
trying to do
normal-
in this room. So we got DJ
Under
way
normal
back there.
circumstances, yeah, you can have 4.
There you go. The other thing that, lots of things, but one of the other things is the Big Read Grant. I don't know which one, Zach or Beth, want to talk about that?
I can talk about that. Just before the pandemic, we applied for a Big Read Grant through the National Endowment for the Arts and received it. And so since September through April, we've been sponsoring programs related to Big Read. So what you do is you choose one book and schedule a lot of programming around that book. We chose An American Sunrise by U.S. Poet Laureate Joy Harjo. So since September, everything went virtual. So we had to make a lot of changes from our initial grant application, but we managed to host, or our co-sponsors throughout the community hosted 12 programs so far, which we think is awesome considering the pandemic. We'll have a few more coming up in April. The biggest event for us was in late January. We were able to host Joy Harjo herself, the current U.S. Poet Laureate, so that was a big win for us. Thanks to co-sponsorship with the library in Florida, so we could split the cost, we were able to do that. So she gave a book discussion over Microsoft Teams and answered a Q&A, and it was really fantastic.
As the dean, Zach, when you see some of this stuff that's going on, under your tutelage, how proud are you of your staff for the grant writers, and the people on, boots on the ground that are doing so much of this work?
Extremely proud. I mean, it's a lot of visibility. It's getting the word out. It's doing outreach and working with the community, and that's exactly what we like to see. And it's building value for what we do and really transforming the library in small but meaningful ways.
Can you tell us a little bit about the stuff you have coming up for the Big Read program that you mentioned in April?
Sure. Coles County Arts Council and Academy of Lifelong Learning are going to be hosting a program on April 22nd, a virtual discussion and a workshop where people will actually get to write as part of that workshop. Lakeland College Library in Mattoon is going to host a book discussion of the book earlier in April. And then the English department is working on bringing a Native American speaker in sometime in April, too. I don't have the time and dates for those yet. But all of that information is on the Big Read website that you can get to through the library website.
And you also had another grant, I believe it was the Broadland Ready grant. So if there's a grant, you guys are applying for it, is what I've gathered. But talk about that one.
Yeah. There's just opportunities that come before us, and we just feel like they're great opportunities for us to pursue. So like the instructional studio, for instance, is an opportunity for us to create a space where students can get help on how to run that hardware and software, and it's right within the dorms. So it just provides an alternate to the CSI. But this broadband grant is an opportunity for us to bridge that digital equity gap with our community, the region. And so it was an opportunity to sort of be entrepreneurial, but also to address economic growth opportunity, and for EIU to play a role in helping with that economic growth, which is we're doing kind of a train the trainer type program with partners, public libraries in the area, Effingham Public Library, Mattoon Public Library, Charleston, but also community colleges and some of the school districts. So the Train the Trainer program is to have a digital literacy coordinator work at Booth and then train our partners that then they make a commitment on training their libraries, their school districts on how to utilize this technology, how to work the software, which in turn benefits their patrons. So if they're coming in looking to apply for a job, they might know how to use Adobe software suite or whatever else they're looking for.
Interesting. I want to go back quick to the selection of Thomas Hall to be your satellite. What led to that? Is there a reason, proximity, or did they apply, or how'd that work?
Yes, the GEAR grants and the GEAR allocations are focused for our underrepresented students and to encourage retention of our students. So there's a new program the EIU Freshman Connection on campus, where unrelated to the library, but they are pairing up new freshman students with a mentor who is a sophomore or a junior and kind of helping them feel their way through college life when they're first getting introduced to college. So we work with them in creating this grant opportunity. So we wanted to have miniature CSI in the dorms where it would be convenient for them. So we looked at Lawson Hall, which I think is where the Freshman Connection students live. That was our first choice, but looking at the spaces, thanks to Mark Hudson and EIU Housing, they were able to give us some space in Thomas, which really fit our needs very well. And also the advantage to the Thomas Hall location is there's a classroom nearby where they teach university foundations in the fall semester, which is also for new students and underrepresented students. So in the fall, once classes are taking place in there, we're hoping to be able to use our technology and with those classes, and it'll be very convenient.
Very well. Daniel, you have a question? Or go ahead.
Along with all of the grants you guys have been getting and events you've been having based on those grants, you guys also have a pitch competition coming up. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So that's also GEAR funded, part of the government's emergency education relief money that gave us the technology for the space. But we also wanted a way, we call it the Center for Student Innovation, is we want a way to make it so that it's a student-driven space. And so we created a pitch competition. It's called What's Your Problem?, where we want students to work in teams to identify a problem and then try to figure out what's the technology, hardware, even some of the space within CSI that we could carve out for student groups, what they need to solve that problem. So, I mean, it could be community-minded, could be something sustainable-oriented, or it's a project-based learning, really, and a way for them to work and collaborate in teams.
And has that started yet? Have people brought ideas, or can you share a couple, if possible?
I can't share a couple, but you can apply now to March 15th. So the competition actually opened in November.
Okay.
So students can apply now. They have until March 15th, and then later in the month we hope to announce who the winners are.
That's interesting, very interesting. I'm trying to look through my list of the many things that the Booth Library is doing. The Awards for Excellence, that's another event or thing you're putting on where kids can win scholarships, which I mean should be interested to all EIU students.
Right.
No, I'll let you say it. I just want to say it's through the Library Advisory Board.
Right. The Library Advisory Board has been sponsoring this competition for some time. So this is a tried and true one for us. We've been doing it at least for a decade, I think. But any student, graduate or undergraduate, who in the last year did some sort of a research project that they're especially proud of, that can be a paper, a podcast, a video, any sort of format, if they use any sort of Booth Library resources at all. So they might have done research at the library, or librarians might have helped them, or maybe they did the podcast in our new podcasting studio, or whatever the case may be. As long as they use Booth Library in some way, they can enter this competition. They upload their paper and they explain a little bit about how Booth Library helped them. And the Library Advisory Board, which is made up of faculty and staff and students from across campus, we judge those at the end of end of this month, and announce the winners in April. But yes, scholarship money is attached to that, and they can also win money through the pitch competition that Zach was just explaining.
Now, on the scholarship, is there more than one, or is there an allotment of money that you decide how many?
We have an allotment of money. We divide our entrance into undergraduates and graduates, so the undergrads aren't competing against the graduate students.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And then we look at the pool of applicants, and we for sure we'll do a first, second, and third, and sometimes honorable mentions depending on who we think deserves to be honored, and then we split the prize money among them.
That's kind of how we do it here with our Dan Marvin WEIU scholarship. We kind of figure out a bunch of good ones. We'd rather give a little bit to some than just, a lot to one, I guess is the easiest way for me to describe that. Also, one of your longtime employees, I was reading the book there, the little pamphlet you sent, John Whistler, 39 years at EIU. He couldn't make it to 40. Come on, John.
I think the pandemic may have shortened his time a little bit, but he's a hard one to replace.
A wealth of knowledge and so much institutional memory.
39 years is incredible.
I know.
I'm not going to make it to 39 years, I don't think.
His wife also worked there for a couple of decades,
really?
And she retired about a year before him. So with both of them gone, we don't know what to do without any Whistler in the building that we can go to and say, hey, remember, 15 years ago when this happened? How'd we fix that?
That's funny. DJ the DJ back there.
I know the bookshelves are still closed in the library, but one of the most popular entities in the library pre-COVID were the study rooms, and now they're back, but they're different.
That's right.
I believe they're one person individually, right?
Yeah, one person, mostly for safety measures, just to make sure that we're following safety standards. I mean, we got recommendations from the epidemiologist and the head of health services. But one of the most important points of the library is that as long as we're still open and the campus is still open, we want to make sure that we're providing services for students first and foremost, faculty and staff, and we recognize that the study rooms are a really important feature. And then a lot of this testing, for students going to graduate school, for instance, we've had students take the LSATs to get into law school, and they've needed areas, whether it's a Carol or a study room, to be able to take those exams online. So we want to make sure we're offering those services.
Since we've had the pandemic for a year, we're kind of up exactly a year early this week, I believe, when the world kind of changed. I mean, talk about the library in terms of are you 100% open? Is everything accessible just with changes, or where do we stand right now at Booth?
Yeah, we are 100% open as far as the building is concerned. As DJ just pointed out, we're still encouraging people not to go up and down the bookshelves and pull their own materials, because we're trying to keep the virus off of hard surfaces. So we have a form, or you can go to this online, or you can go to the circulation desk. If there's a book you want off a shelf, we prefer that you ask our staff to get it for you. But other than that, we have our social distancing measures in place. Our furniture is spread out. Every other computer is shut off in the computer labs and all that. And singles only in our study rooms. But everything is back open now. We're trying to accommodate people as much as possible. We have an extra cleaning crew made up of student workers who go around every couple of hours and clean all the tables and desks, and trying to keep it, as safe as possible.
And even to our point about making sure we provide services for students, we've still worked with athletics to provide study halls for, say, the football program comes in Sunday through Thursday every evening, and they have, even in the fall, to use the study tables in the West Reading Room, which is a large area with large tables, so that at least the team can congregate in the space and still use services there.
Do you find that most of the students are following all the rules? It seems like here in Buzzard they are. I mean, do you have to yell at anybody over there, or is it all pretty much the buy-in?
By and large, right?
They follow the rules for the most part. As you mentioned before we started, there's some mass fatigue going on. So we sometimes have to ask them to put their masks on. Even, if they're sitting in an area by themselves and it seems like there's not anyone close, we still have rules that we have to follow. We want to stay open. We certainly don't want an outbreak traced back to Booth Library. So students do have to wear their masks while they're in there, unless they're eating and drinking. But as soon as you're done eating and drinking, you put your mask back on.
And honestly, I think it's just well-intentioned. I think
Right.
that's
Yeah.
it. They're eating and drinking, or they're so secluded that they just sort of relax for a little bit, and then you give them a gentle reminder, and they're very good usually about putting their mask on. So,
Right.
Cool.
yeah.
I was also looking at the pamphlet you guys sent, and I saw something about the Keep, which is an event planning site. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. The EIU Institutional Repository on our campus is called the Keep. It's run through the library. So what that is pretty much a digital archive of documents and things important to EIU. So we've had that going for years, but most recently we've started to use it as an event platform. So that's something we hadn't done a lot of pre-pandemic, but as we all know, everything's gone virtually, so there have been a lot of events. People needed a platform to put on conferences and things. Most recently, the EI Unity Conference on Friday is an example. So Todd Bruns, one of our librarians, oversees that, and he can set you up, put all of your agenda out there, links to every workshop that's being presented with the Zoom or whatever platform you're using. So it's become very popular. We've had several EIU groups take advantage of it over this school year. So it's something kind of new that we've always had the ability to do, but just hadn't used it much before the pandemic.
What I like is to go back and read the Daily Eastern News from when I was in
Right.
college for a memory thing. If I'm just bored maybe on an afternoon, I'll go in there, and it's really neat if you haven't read some of the old Daily Eastern News. And
Yeah, the
to watch-
Warblers,
to see
too.
the ads. And,
I like to look at the Warbler yearbooks from 1911
right,
or
I
whatever
know,
it
I
is.
know.
That's very cool. Now, I know as we move forward, things are getting a little bit better, knock on wood as we say that. Do you plan on having some of more of your exhibits and things in the fall, or are you thinking of more spring 22?
I think we're thinking about it. I mean, not just thinking about it, we're sort of planning for it, because I think we're eager to get back into sort of the physical face-to-face environment where we have exhibits. But one of the things we've really thought hard about during the pandemic that's lent itself is to think about how we promote some of these exhibits in an online format too, or just mix it up moving forward. So I think it's a win-win if we have digital displays in the library that are paired or right next adjacent to a physical exhibit. And I think that benefits everybody, so we can interact online and when we come into the library.
Do you think the pandemic will make permanent changes, or will you guys think at some point you'll be back to all the way you were? I know a lot of businesses are doing the work from home. I mean, have you thought about that much yet?
Oh, we have had some of us off and on from the library working from home, depending on the circumstances. Of course, to keep your building open, you have to have a certain amount of people in the building to actually be at the desk and answering questions and things. So yeah, I've thought about that a lot. From the library world, so many of our resources were already available electronically before the pandemic. I think people have gotten more used to using those now. So we may see our website statistics go up and our in-person use of our materials go down. I don't know. I'm just speculating here.
And I'd say the operative word is flexibility. We've realized that we can be more flexible.
Yeah.
So I think we'll probably be more flexible moving forward too.
What have the numbers been like? Could you compare numbers of how many people are using the library in a given semester or month? I don't know how you track those, but as during the pandemic as opposed pre-pandemic?
I'd say it's been down by about 25% or so is the estimate. And it was noticeable at the beginning of the fall semester too. Well, mostly, and you could get a sense for it. And I think there was a little bit of hesitancy or trepidation about what's this going to look like, what's the mask policy, how are we going to space out. But once students realize, hey, we can really do essentially what we were doing before, we just have to keep our masks on and just be careful, it started to ramp up in its popularity.
Okay.
I have more of a selfish question.
No, that's
So, I'm a tour guide, and I just wanted to know, is there any unknown fun fact I could use to give prospective students during my tours?
Well, we need to update the tour guides with information on the Center for Student Innovation. Thanks for reminding me. So that when you go through the building and give a tour, you can point that out to potential students, because I think that's a real selling point for the university. Do you explain who Booth Library is named after?
I mentioned her name, but I never say
so
why.
Mary J. Booth, she has an interesting history. That might be a fun fact that you can share.
Or the fact you had a kid that lived in your library that we learned
Well,
last
he
time.
didn't live in the library,
Oh, well,
on campus.
Yeah, on campus.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't us.
Yeah, okay.
It was the one of the academic programs
Yeah,
on
that
campus.
was so cool.
Yeah, as part of our 125th exhibit, the exhibit's still up, actually, information about the young child that was raised as part of a program here back in the day.
I guess we would be remiss to not be doing our jobs if Daniel and I didn't have to ask you this question. The Dr. Seuss book controversy, have you guys even thought about it? Did you make any adjustments, or is there Dr. Seuss books there? Or is it one of those things that you're just like not too concerned about?
Well, as an academic library, we just want to make sure that those books are available for research, and so we made an effort to pull them just so that they weren't vandalized or didn't get taken out in protest or any such thing. So we want to make them available, but for access in-house in a research environment for now. So mostly it was just cautiously reactionary, just to make sure they were available.
Okay. What have you learned through the pandemic? Is there stuff that you just never thought you would be having to worry about, or as we look back at this past year?
I said to someone on the phone this morning that I spend half my life on Zoom. So, and at first I said it was fun. Now I'm a little
Zoom fatigue. Yeah.
Zoom fatigue. Yeah. As I said to her, I'm an introvert, but even I need to be around people a little bit more than what we've done at the pandemic. So we have learned that there's a lot of things that we can do remotely to keep our library running, but we've also learned that you just can't replace that one-on-one personal contact. When a student comes in to help ask for research help, or a faculty member, you can help them out as much as you can, and we have remotely, but it's not the same. There are some things you just can't replace virtually, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'd say the human connection is really important. And as we talked about, the flexibility and the value of technology and internet connections.
We have a few minutes left. We're talking with Beth Heldebrandt and Zach Newell from the EIU Booth Library. Libraries in 20 years from now, what do you see the future? Where do we go?
I think the CSI space represents that future. I think it's just more versatile in terms of its space, its access to digital technology, digital platforms, and the way we're transforming through teaching and learning through the library.
Anything to add?
I think fewer and fewer physical resources that you can hold in your hand. People are getting more into ebooks, audiobooks, research online. So I think the CSI space that we've been talking about used to be a storage area for magazines. We don't need a storage area for magazines anymore because you can access those magazines, even the old version, old copies from 20, 30 years ago online. So I think there'll be more and more of that. And so the spaces within library buildings will be used for other more progressive things like we've done with our CSI.
And I think even in the spirit of the pitch competition, I think there's going to be more areas for collaboration or collaborative enterprises and trying to do a lot of problem solving together.
Daniel, any final questions for our guest today?
You might have just answered it a little bit. I was going to ask, do you think there's going to be a time where books aren't really a primary resource in the library anymore, even to the point where they aren't going to exist in physical form?
Ooh, good deep question there.
I think books that have yet to be published will, over time, I'm no expert at this. This is just me thinking that they'll do a lot more electronic publishing and less physical publishing. But those older books, you can't get everything online yet. So those older books, the really fun ones that are,
classics,
you can go
yeah.
back at the classics and things that were published 100 years ago or more, those kinds of things are probably always only going to be in physical form. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody will digitize that. But I'm still the kind of person who likes to hold a book in my hand when I read.
Yeah.
So,
I don't see that we're going to get rid of books entirely. But like you said, they'll just be native digital copies. They'll come out in digital form and they'll never be a print copy, right?
Let's see. A couple of rapid fire questions. All-time favorite autobiography?
a biography of Judy Garland.
Autobiography?
Yeah, it's got to be or just a biography. I
Oh,
guess.
you said autobiography.
I meant biography.
Okay, it wasn't. That was not an autobiography. That was just a biography. Can't think of it.
I don't know if I have a favorite, but I just read Obama's biography. That was pretty good.
We'll call that one. You could change one thing about Booth Library. You could change something. What would you change? Or would you?
What would I change about Booth Library? I'm going to steal Zach's answer.
You know that I'm heading there.
I'm going to say it first, and you got to come up with something else.
that's
adding a coffee shop to the building.
Oh, was that it?
No, actually, I wasn't going to say that. That would have been my second
Sure.
answer. I was going to say that offices are all more visible so that everybody can access all of the personnel in the library more readily.
Daniel, you can answer this question as well. How many books do you read a year?
70.
Less than 10.
I'd say about 30.
Okay. Well, you're obviously the winner there.
I read a lot in the pandemic. I'm not going anywhere.
Your best estimate right now, how many EIU students are in Booth Library 12 o'clock on a noon on a Monday?
Oh, I would say 60.
75.
50.
50? All right. So we're anywhere between 50 and 75. All right. One more. The strangest book you've ever read. Just give us a title of a strange book.
Strange book.
Or odd. Or you can go to Zach, since if anything come to mind.
Nothing that comes up, no.
I think I stumped him finally.
I think you asked me this in a previous episode, but The Sound and the Fury, which I had to read for my master's program, I still don't understand that book. So
There you go. Well, I appreciate you coming in. It's always great to talk to the library. You're doing great things. Thank you all.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
We are WEIU.